acts merely because of their identity.
I'm going to kick this off by saying, do not allow people to lie to you and to gaslight you into not believing your own eyes and ears when you see and hear things. When you see the obvious, when you hear the obvious. Don't let them try to tell you that they're not trying to normalize love at any age type of behavior and hiding behind these woke identity groupings and this activism for those groups, and then they slowly slide in all these things. This was always the end game for everybody that was able to see the true intentions. I was able to see through these people. Anytime that they tried to normalize a underage person's ability to make permanent physical changes to their body, whether it be through changing their hormonal makeup or removing parts of their body or adding parts of their body at an underage, minor, teenagers, adolescents, whatever, preteens, that is designed to set a precedent for that person's ability, for that child's ability to consent to a number of other things in regards to their body that we have long made illegal, saying that up until a certain age, they can't consent. They can't reasonably consent. They don't have the capacity to understand the effects and the long-term effects of even voicing consent, of even saying yes to somebody of a certain age, of saying yes to somebody of a certain relationship with them. And that's why we put the adults that do that in prison. And if you don't really believe me, I mean, you saw a little bit probably at the top there, if I put it at the top, but this is Representative Katie Porter, Democrat. So don't let them tell you that it's not a mainstream thing either. Don't let them tell you that oh yeah, it exists, but it's a fringe thing. This is her saying that kind of stuff, that love at any age, isn't a crime. It's just an identity, like straight, gay, lesbian.
This allegation of groomer and pedophile, it is alleging that a person is criminal somehow and engaged in criminal acts merely because of their identity, their sexual orientation, their gender identity. So this is clearly prohibited under Twitter's content, yet you found hundreds of these posts on the platform. Your team filed complaints about these posts, correct?
Yes.
And how often did Twitter act to take down these posts, which violated its own content policy?
Very rarely.
So from our calculation, it looks like about 99% of your complaints, they basically acted on one or two of the 100 plus complaints you filed. Instead of taking them down, Twitter elevated them, allowing them to reach an approximate 72 million users. This is not just about what happens online. What happens online translates into real harms in people's lives. Ms. Popcock, you provide services to a community that experienced a devastating LGBTQ attack. Can you provide some examples of the link between speech online and attacks against providers like you? This allegation of groomer and pedophile, it is alleging that a person is criminal somehow and engaged in criminal acts merely because of their identity.
They're not criminals. They are acting out of their own personal identity. This is a mainstream Democrat elected to office who has a say, who is supposed to represent her constituents, who have people who have voted for her that don't engage in online discourse. This is the person that represents all those people. And then you'll get those people denying that this stuff is not becoming a mainstream issue when it so evidently and clearly is. The amount of comments I get in previous videos about fringe people and this isn't happening. The amount of tweets that I get about the education system. That apparently, it's not happening in the education system. And then when you present any type of data, all of a sudden that data is not good enough. Well, that's just one example. It's like, well, you asked for an example, and I gave you an example. Now it's just one example. Now I need 2 examples. And you give 2 examples. It's like, oh, it's just 2 examples. I need 3 examples. And you realize quickly that it has nothing to do with actually them wanting to receive information. It's just about them continuously moving the goalposts so that they could keep living in this world of delusion that they've become so settled in. And it is all the way into the education system where people are trying to be activists, trying to make people activists within the actual school system. This is an example right here on the screen, I'll put it up, of a grade 9 class. That's supposed to be sex ed. And all the closing stuff is about how you can be an ally and how you can be an advocate for these people in these groups. And then, which, first of all, you shouldn't be in the education system trying to get people to be advocates. You shouldn't be preaching activism, Jesus, in education. It should be about actual biology. And I understand that the biology thing kind of flies in the face of being an ally, but this is what happens when you give these teachers power. But then what ends up turning around on this is now you've turned them into activists. So now they're preaching, and they're not old enough to really dissect all these things properly. They're just sort of receiving the information as you give it to them. So now you slip in that they apparently now, at the ages of whatever grade 9 age is now, whatever, 12, 13, 14, that they are actually able to consent to all these things happening to their body. And then you slip in the whole like, oh, I mean, being a Geppetto is just an identity. It's not a crime. And then you compound that type of narrative onto the education that you're giving them. And that's how you create the grooming process. But then you get people who are trying to be smartasses who say things like this, and they think they're making some sort of obnoxious point, like throwing it in my face. But that tweet right there, the rainbow equals political, it absolutely is. You have Democrats who are actively acting that way. You have them pushing this type of ideology into the education system. And they have people that they're bringing up as educators who then put this out there. Did you know that you're way more likely per capita to be a child and to be, by a teacher than you are a priest? Yet the church is the one, and well-deserved, by the way, that has the bad rap. Well-deserved. Not saying they don't deserve it. Well-deserved. But nobody talks about the fact that per capita, it's worse in the education system. And then you have people who vote for politicians who are going to then tell their constituents that this is all normal. And the people that are going to just vote blue, the hashtag vote blue no matter who people, are going to keep voting for these people who are going to keep pushing through this legislation to normalize things, and they won't even realize the harm that they're going to be doing to their kids and to the future kids that, in their communities, by allowing these people to sort of run roughshod with this ideology, with this slowly picking apart of the moral compass and the moral fiber of a community. Because it's not just going to happen, in one fell swoop. I think that's a lot of the issues that we have, is people think this all happens overnight. They don't realize the stuff that happened during World War II took time. It took years. It took little bits, little brainwashing seeds being planted. And that's what's happening right now. It's just an identity. And they don't stick on that point for a while. They just slip it in there. They just slip it in there and then move on. Slip it in, move on. And that's what they want to do and that's ironically what they want to do to your kids. Slip it in and move on. But I think it's just good to know that the politicians out there are doing this stuff, and they're doing it in these really sneaky ways, and that you guys should have the information and as much of it as possible so you can sort of pass this along to maybe some apolitical people in your communities, to maybe get them to start paying more attention, because the worst is the low information voter who seems to always vote with their hearts rather than their heads. And that's why you get politicians like Katie Porter and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and AOC, you name it. But nobody that's a high information voter would ever put these people in, knowing that this is the stuff that they're doing on the DL. But thanks for coming back to the channel, and make sure to hit the like and the subscribe on this video if you haven't already. It's the freest, quickest, and easiest way you can support me in this channel and continue the growth of it into you know, big time monies, all the monies. I like some monies. Help me get the monies. I'll see you guys next time.